Hey scholars, and welcome back to our second lesson for the week on reinforcement lessons. Today we're going to be talking about determining word meanings. This is your workbook lesson 35. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so when we're talking about multiple meaning words, those are words that are spelled the same but have one or more meanings. Another word for these is homonyms. So homonyms are spelled the same, but they have multiple meanings. Here's a chart with some examples. We have the word bear. Now, bear can mean an animal, or it can also mean to go in a direction. Another example that you may have heard of more is blue. Now, blue can mean a color, or it can mean a feeling, like I'm feeling sad. It can also mean to feel sad. A third example we have is fair. Now, fair can mean a show, like you go to the fair, or it can mean, hey, that's not fair, playing by the rules. These are some examples of homonyms that, again, are spelled the same, but have more than one meaning. Now, sometimes multiple word meanings or multiple meaning words are spelled the same, but are pronounced differently and also have different meanings. So they're spelled the same, but they're pronounced differently, unlike homonyms, and they also have different meanings. These are called homographs. Here are some examples. We have the word close or close. Now, when we're saying something is close to us, we say close. When we're saying we want to shut something, we say close. Now they're pronounced differently. Then we have the word object or object. When we're saying a purpose or a goal, we're saying this is the object. When we're saying we're against something, we're saying we object. Same spelling, different meanings, different pronunciation. These are homographs. All right, let's talk about one of our favorite things that we've mentioned all throughout the year, context clues. Now, context clues are hints you get from the other words in the same sentence or another sentence nearby. When you use context clues, you think about how the word is used in the sentence or paragraph. Here are some examples. I painted my room blue yesterday. I was feeling blue yesterday. In the first sentence, blue is a color, while it is a feeling in the second sentence. Now we know it's a color in the first sentence because we see the word painted. We paint with colors. We know it's a feeling in the second sentence because we see the verb feeling. This tells us that this is a feeling. All right, so moving on, still talking about context clues, let's look at an example sentence and use some context clues to figure out the underlined word, inferno. By the time the firefighters arrived, the little campfire had grown into a blazing inferno. Let's take some steps to figure it out. So what is an inferno? Let's reread that first part of the sentence. By the time the firefighters arrived. What does that first part tell us? It tells us that firefighters were there, which tells you that the word inferno has something to do with fire. Now let's look at the second part of the sentence. The little campfire had grown into a blazing inferno. This tells us that the fire had grown and was blazing, which means very large and strong. Now, even if we didn't know what the word blazing means, when we see the word grown, we know it went from smaller to bigger. So that would give us a clue that it is big. Fire plus large plus strong equals big, strong fire. Now we know that that's what inferno means, big, strong fire. We use context clues by looking at words in the sentence that we already knew to figure that out. Now we're going to do a thinking it through, which is an I do, and we're going to look at an example passage and then try and figure out what a word means. The example passage is on page 298 in your packet or your workbook. We're going to go ahead and read together. I'll read aloud and you follow along. I'm going to begin with the words Rodney wanted. Ronnie wanted to go to the ice cream shop, but he had to help his dad in the garden. His dad promised that they would get a root beer float and a sundae after the lawn was cut. Rodney could not wait. What does the word float mean in the paragraph? What word helped you understand the meaning of float? So that's the question that I'm trying to answer. Let's look at how I got there. I know float can mean to bob in water or to not sink, but that wouldn't make sense in this sentence. Using context clues, I see they're talking about soda, and then they also mention sundaes. I heard of a treat that involved soda and ice cream. I think a root beer float is ice cream and root beer together. So I know the word sundaes is ice cream, and I know that root beer is soda. So when I try to figure out what float is, I use some background knowledge and use context clues with the words around that word in the sentence, and I can figure out what it means. So here's my final answer. The word float means a dessert made of ice cream and soda. Words that helped me figure that out were sundae, root beer, and reward. Now, reward helped me, scholars, because I know that a root beer float is something, or I know that a reward is something that you don't get often and that you really enjoy. I know a root beer float is something that somebody could really enjoy because it has ice cream and soda. So that word also helped me. All right, so now let's do a we do and look at our coached example on page 299 in our book. I'm going to read the passage out loud, starting with the word many plants. Many plants grow from seeds. Seeds hold all the parts of a new plant inside them, but seeds cannot grow well if they are too close to the plant that made them. The seeds in the plant compete or fight for the light, the water, and food they need. So seeds need to journey away from the plant. How do they travel? Some seeds travel by wind. When wind blows, the seeds fly and traverse or move across great distances. Our first question says, what does close mean as it is used in the passage? As always, scholars, let's look at those hints at the bottom. The hint at the bottom of question 1 says, think about other words that would make sense in place of the underlined words. That is a great hint to use. Let's go back and look at our second sentence in the passage that has the word close. But seeds cannot grow well if they are too close to the plant that made them. What else would fit? But seeds cannot grow well. I'm going to look at my options A through D and figure out which of those words would also make sense. But seeds cannot grow well if they are too near to the plant that made them. But seeds cannot grow well if they are too shut to the plant that made them. But seeds cannot grow well if they are to move from the plant that made them. But seeds cannot grow well if they are too open to the plant that made them. Now, B and C automatically do not work because those are action words, to shut, to move. And the word that's used in the sentence, close, it's not an action word. So A and D are our other options. Now, if they are too open to the plant that made them, doesn't sound like it would make sense because I'm not sure how a seed can be too open to something. That doesn't quite make sense with what I know about seeds. A sounds like the best option. They cannot grow well if they are too near to the plant that made them. So I'm going to choose A as my option as to what close means in the passage. Let's look at question number 2. What does traverse mean in the passage? Our hint under question number 2 says, to use context clues, look for other words in the sentence that are near the word traverse. So let's go back and read that last sentence. When wind blows, the seeds fly and traverse or move across great distances. So I see those words or move across right next to traverse immediately following it. I also see move across as an option C. I'm going to see if my other options make sense. I'm going to take those words and replace traverse with them. The seeds fly and blow or move across great distances. Doesn't really sound too great. The seeds fly and fly. Now that wouldn't make sense because we'd just be repeating the same word again. The seeds fly and move across or move across great distances. Now, that word I think would make the most sense because the seeds fly and move across or move across. It seems as though the words in the original sentence or move across were clarifying what traverse means. So because I see move across as an option and I also see it in the sentence, I think C would be the best option. Now that we have gone over words with multiple meanings, you are going to complete pages 300 to 301. Have a great day, scholars. Talk to you later.